2 weeks before our 180-person wedding, my fiancée leaned in and admitted she still had feelings for her ex. I told her, then go be with him. After that, I calmly called off the wedding plans, canceled the arrangements, and put the house up for sale. She assumed I was bluffing, until the moving trucks pulled into the driveway. My name is Evan. I am 31 and I work in IT project management for a hospital network in the Midwest. Most days are tickets, meetings, and putting out small fires, then gym, dinner, bed. I like routines because they keep life simple. My fiancée is Chloe, 29. We have been together a little over 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and we live together in a house we bought last summer. The wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks from the day everything happened. About 180 guests, a big venue, the kind of thing where you can feel the cost every time you open an email. Planning has been mostly Chloe's thing. She enjoys it, and she is good at being in charge. I have been handling the practical parts, payments, vendor calls, travel, guest list spreadsheet, all the boring stuff. That division worked until it didn't. Chloe has a way of turning normal conversations into a test. If I asked about the budget, I was stressing her out. If I asked about timelines, I was micromanaging. If I tried to stay quiet, I was being emotionally unavailable. She also liked to talk about how lucky I was, usually in a jokey tone, but it always landed like a tiny insult. Like I should be grateful she picked me. 2 weeks before the wedding, we had a final walkthrough scheduled at the venue that Saturday. The week before that was chaos. Seating chart revisions, her mom arguing about +1s, last-minute changes to the bar package because someone's cousin only drinks a specific tequila. I was tired, but I thought this was normal pre-wedding stress. On Thursday night, Chloe came home late from what she called a quick drink with coworkers. She was buzzed and sharp, like she had already been arguing with someone in her head. She tossed her heels by the door and started complaining about how no one helps her, how she is carrying the whole wedding, how I do not understand what it is like to be the one everyone expects perfection from. I told her I understood she was stressed. I also said we needed to confirm the final payment schedule because the next deposit was due Monday. That is when she did this weird thing where she got very calm and very serious, like she was switching modes. She sat down across from me at the kitchen island, leaned forward, and said she needed to tell me something before we got married. Her eyes were glossy, but her voice was steady. Then she said it. She said she still had feelings for her ex. I did not react immediately. I asked her what she meant. She rolled her eyes like I was being deliberately slow and said she thought she had moved past it, but recently she had been thinking about him more. Her ex is named Daniel. They dated for 5 years before we met. From what I know, he cheated once early on, they broke up, then got back together, then eventually ended things for good. At least that is the version she gave me. I asked if she had spoken to him. She said no, but she had looked at his social media a few times. Then she corrected herself and said more than a few. She said seeing him doing well made her question whether she had unresolved feelings. She said this like it was an insight she was proud of, like she was being brave by telling me. I asked why she was telling me 2 weeks before our wedding. She shrugged and said it would be dishonest to marry me without admitting it. I asked her directly if she wanted to be with him instead of me. She hesitated long enough to answer the question without actually answering it. She said she did not know. She said maybe she just needed closure. She said everyone has doubts before a big commitment. The way she said it made it sound like my reaction would determine whether she stayed. Like I was supposed to compete or reassure her harder. I have seen that pattern before. If I pushed back, I was insecure. If I backed down, she felt desired. I told her I was not interested in being a backup plan. I said if she had feelings for someone else strong enough to bring up now, then she should go figure that out. She laughed a little and said I was being dramatic. Then she leaned closer and said she still loved me, but love is complicated. That phrase irritated me more than the confession itself. I asked one more time if she wanted to postpone the wedding. She did not say yes. She did not say no. She said she needed me to fight for her a little. That is when I told her, calmly, then go be with him. She stared at me like she was waiting for the rest of the sentence. When nothing followed, she smirked and said I was trying to scare her. She told me I always go cold when things get uncomfortable. Then she said I was proving her point about not fighting for her. I told her I was not interested in competing with a memory. If she needed comparison to feel secure, that was already information I could use. She said I was twisting it. According to her, she was just being transparent and I was punishing her for honesty. I asked a simple question. If Daniel texted her tomorrow and said he wanted to try again, What would she do? She paused again. Not long, but long enough. Then she said she would at least hear him out. She added that it did not mean she would choose him. That was enough for me. I told her I was not marrying someone who would entertain alternatives. I said we could cancel now before contracts locked further payments. I kept my voice even because I did not want this to turn into something emotional and circular. She laughed again and said I was overreacting. She said every bride has doubts and that I was being insecure. Then she added that Daniel had always fought harder for her than I did. That comment clarified something. This was not about unresolved feelings. This was about leverage. She wanted to feel pursued. She wanted to see if I would panic. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the vendor spreadsheet. I told her I would start making calls in the morning. I said we should also speak to our realtor about listing the house quickly since it would be easier before the wedding chaos. That is when her expression shifted slightly. She asked why I was talking about the house. I reminded her we bought it together and neither of us could comfortably afford it alone. She told me to stop being ridiculous and said we would talk about this when I calmed down. I told her I was calm. The next morning, I went to work like usual. I had a vendor call at 9 and a deployment meeting at 11. I did not text her anything emotional. Around 10, I stepped out and called the venue coordinator. I told her we needed to cancel the event. She explained the contract terms. We would lose the latest deposit, but avoid the final balance if we canceled before Monday. I confirmed in writing while I was on the phone. After that, I called the caterer, the photographer, the DJ, and the florist. Same process. Some deposits were non-refundable. I accepted that. It was still cheaper than a divorce. By early afternoon, I had emailed the guest list through our wedding website and marked the event as canceled. I kept the message short and neutral. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding would not be taking place. Chloe started calling me around noon. I was in meetings, so I let them go to voicemail. The messages shifted in tone. First annoyed, then confused, then angry. She said I needed to stop embarrassing her. She said I was taking things too far. When I got home that evening, she was waiting in the kitchen. Her makeup was done like she had filmed a video or taken photos. She immediately asked if I had actually canceled anything. I said yes. She asked which vendors. I listed them. She told me to call them back and fix it. She said she had just been venting and I had blown up our entire future over one conversation. I reminded her that the conversation involved her admitting she would hear out her ex if he reached out. She said that was hypothetical and I was weaponizing it. She also said her parents were already asking questions because of the cancellation email. I told her I would speak with them if needed and explain that it was my decision. That made her angrier. She said I was making her look rejected. I told her the alternative was marrying someone who was unsure. That was not something I was willing to do. She accused me of trying to control the narrative. I told her there was no narrative, just logistics. The next day I called our realtor. We had bought the house with both names on the mortgage, 50-50. The market in our area was still steady, and similar houses were moving within a few weeks. I asked her what listing quickly would look like. She said we could photograph by the weekend and go live early next week. When I told Chloe that evening, she stared at me like I had crossed into something irreversible. She said I could not just decide to sell our home without her agreement. I reminded her I was not deciding alone. I was proposing we sell an asset we could not reasonably maintain separately. I asked if she wanted to buy me out. She went quiet because she knew she could not. She switched tactics. She said couples fight before weddings all the time and that I was sabotaging years of investment over pride. I told her it was not pride. It was risk assessment. Marrying someone who openly questioned whether they preferred someone else was not a stable foundation. She started crying then, but it felt measured. She said she had only mentioned Daniel because she trusted me. She said I was punishing vulnerability. The realtor came by Saturday morning to take photos. Chloe stayed in the bedroom for most of it. She texted me that I was humiliating her and that no one would respect a man who walks away this easily. I told her it was not easy. It was simple. She responded with a thumbs up emoji. By Monday, the listing was live. I forwarded her the link for transparency. She did not respond for hours. Then she asked if I was actually planning to move out or if this was still some kind of demonstration. That evening, 2 moving trucks pulled into the driveway. She was standing at the front window when the trucks backed in. I had scheduled them the day before. One was for my things. The other was a short-term storage unit container I rented so we could stage the house properly for showings. Chloe came outside before the drivers even stepped out of the cabs. She asked me what I thought I was doing. I told her I was separating our belongings so we could move forward without tension during showings. I had already arranged a short-term lease on a one-bedroom apartment closer to my office. It was available immediately. She said I was insane for committing to this without giving her time to process. I reminded her that she introduced uncertainty, not me. I also told her that once the wedding was canceled, living together without a clear plan would only get messier. She accused me of trying to scare her into apologizing. I told her I was not looking for an apology. I was looking for clarity, and I had it. The movers worked quickly. I had labeled my office equipment, clothes, personal documents, and electronics in advance. I had also opened a new bank account the previous day and transferred my portion of our joint savings, leaving an exact record of what was moved. I emailed her the spreadsheet so there would be no confusion later. She kept saying this was extreme. She said couples talk through doubts. They do not dismantle their lives overnight. I told her doubts about seating charts are normal. Doubts about preferring someone else are not. At one point, she said I was making a mistake I would regret. I asked her directly if she had contacted Daniel since our conversation. She did not answer immediately. Then she said that was none of my business anymore. That was the first fully honest thing she said. By that evening, my side of the closet was empty and the guest room was cleared for staging. I left the keys on the kitchen counter for her copy and kept mine. Before I drove away, she asked if I really thought she would have chosen him over me. I told her I was not willing to wait around to find out. I moved into the apartment that night. It was smaller and closer to downtown, about 10 minutes from my office. I unpacked essentials and left the rest in boxes. The place was quiet in a way the house had not been for months. The next morning, Chloe texted asking if we could talk in person without movers or realtors around. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between the house and my apartment. She arrived looking composed, but tense. She immediately said she had not contacted Daniel. Then she added that she had drafted a message but never sent it. She showed me her phone as proof. The message was still sitting in her drafts. It was short and direct, asking how he had been and if he ever thought about them. I told her drafting it was enough information. She said everyone thinks about exes before major milestones. She insisted she had only wanted reassurance from me and that I had overcorrected. I asked her what outcome she expected when she told me she still had feelings for him. She said she expected me to fight harder, maybe remind her why we worked. She said Daniel used to make big gestures, and she sometimes missed that intensity. I told her I am not interested in competing with someone else's memory or performing to secure my place. She said that attitude was exactly why she sometimes questioned whether I loved her enough. I explained that stability is not the same as indifference. I had shown commitment by buying a house and planning a wedding. I was not going to prove it by tolerating emotional triangulation. She then said something that shifted things again. She admitted she had run into Daniel at a mutual friend's birthday a month earlier. She said it was brief and nothing happened, but it stirred up feelings she thought were gone. That was new information. I asked why she did not mention that before. She said she did not want me to overreact. I finished my coffee and told her I appreciated the clarification. Then I told her it confirmed I made the right decision. After I left the coffee shop, I sat in my car for a few minutes and reviewed the conversation in my head. There was no new information that changed the core issue. She had seen her ex, drafted a message to him, and expected me to compete for reassurance. That was enough. Before I started the engine, I blocked her number. I also removed her from social media and muted notifications from her family. We still had email open for house logistics, and the realtor was copied on everything important. There was no reason for direct contact beyond that. Later that afternoon, I drove to the house to collect the last of my documents from the office filing cabinet and a few tools from the garage. When I walked in, she was in the living room scrolling on her phone. She looked up and said she had been trying to call me. I told her I blocked her number and that we could communicate by email if necessary. She stared at me like she was waiting for me to soften it with a joke. I did not. She said blocking her was childish. I told her it was a boundary. I was not interested in late-night emotional reversals or arguments that would loop back to the same issue. She followed me to the office and said she had been thinking about what I said. She claimed she never would have actually met up with Daniel, that she only wanted reassurance from me. I asked if she had deleted the drafted message. She hesitated, then said she did not see why that mattered anymore. That answer confirmed the pattern. I gathered the documents, closed the drawer, and told her the house showings were still scheduled for the weekend. She asked again if we could pause everything and talk it through properly. I told her we had already talked. That evening, our realtor called. We had received an offer above asking price. The offer came in that evening. It was above asking, clean financing, flexible closing. Our realtor said it was strong and unlikely to improve much with a counter. I forwarded the details to Chloe by email since her number was blocked, and that was not changing. About 20 minutes later, she replied asking if we should counter anyway. The message read like we were still operating as a team, making strategic decisions. I wrote back that I preferred to accept as is. Certainty and speed mattered more than pushing for marginal gains. The sooner it closed, the sooner we both had clarity. Her next email was longer. She said everything felt rushed and that I was not giving her space to think. She said most couples who hit turbulence before a wedding pause and reassess instead of dismantling everything within a week. She also wrote that she never believed I would actually move out. That sentence explained a lot. I replied that once the wedding was canceled and I secured another lease, continuing to live together would only create confusion. Listing the house was the most practical solution given the mortgage size. I kept the message focused on numbers and timelines. She responded by asking if there was truly no scenario where we could reconsider after some time apart. I told her I was not interested in an indefinite pause where we stayed emotionally attached while evaluating alternatives. That is not how I operate. There was a long gap before her final message that night. It was short and practical. She asked about the estimated closing date and how long she realistically had before she needed to move. I told her escrow was projected at 30 days and that we would both need to be out before final walkthrough. I added that the proceeds would be split evenly after the mortgage payoff and fees, as originally structured. She did not argue with that. I signed the acceptance electronically before going to bed. Closing moved quickly. The inspection came back clean. The buyers did not ask for repairs beyond a minor credit for a loose deck railing. We signed everything electronically and scheduled the final walkthrough for 4 weeks out. During that time, all communication stayed in email with the realtor copied. There were no emotional messages. No late-night reversals. Just timelines, utility transfers, and confirmation of moving dates. I picked up the last of my things the week before closing while she was at work. I had already cleared it with her over email. The house looked staged and unfamiliar without our furniture. It felt transactional, which made the process easier. On closing day, the funds were wired that afternoon. After the mortgage payoff and fees, the remaining amount was split evenly into our separate accounts. I confirmed receipt and sent a brief email wishing her well. She replied with a short acknowledgement and nothing else. I heard through a mutual friend a month later that she had reconnected with Daniel. I did not verify it, and I did not reach out. It was not relevant to my decisions at that point. The apartment lease I signed was 12 months. I kept my routine the same. Work, gym, dinner, sleep. The difference was that there was no background tension about proving anything or competing with someone who was not even present. Looking back, the timeline was tight but logical. She introduced uncertainty 2 weeks before a major legal and financial commitment. I responded before the commitment locked in. There was no public scene, no drawn-out arguments, no attempt to monitor her choices. She assumed I was bluffing. I was not. The trucks, the listing, the block number, the signed documents. None of it was dramatic in the moment. It was just a sequence of decisions based on the information I was given. That is where it ended.